Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I thought it was kind of, in a way, symbolic and metaphorical, but at one point she really was on fire. I see what you did there. Hi guys, my name is Maria Park and this is Approach the Nerd. And in this episode, we are reviewing the movie Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Now, I just saw this on Hulu. I'd heard about it, but I didn't have access to watching it until recently. I did not have any expectations going in. I knew that this was a queer film. Being queer, I always tend to, kind of not really go towards those, but I do. I do kind of go towards them. But yeah, I didn't have any expectations from this film. I thought that it looked cool. The premise looked cool. I knew it was a period piece. I just didn't know what to expect. I will say this. I have two different points of views on this review. I have it from a film student who graduated from film school point of view, and then a lover of movies, especially with queer content point of view. So I'm going to kind of split that in two. So first I'm going to talk about the technical aspects of this movie because, my lord, this movie, when you first watch it, it does feel like a slow burn, isolating, claustrophobic type of environment because it is filmed on an island. I think in the movie they call it Brittany Island. And it seems like there's not really a lot of people on this island. Like it's very closed off from the rest of society. That's what it looks like. But when I was reading, basically the technicalities of how this movie was shot, and especially since I understand, working on a few film sets and, graduating with a film degree, I understand what goes into making shot compositions and, framing and lighting, all of this technical gumbo that we don't really talk about, a lot when you're making YouTube videos. But making movies is hard. Making this movie was extremely hard because the director / writer of this movie, let's see if I can say her name right, Céline Sciamma. I don't speak French, forgive me. That woman is a genius, and I'm going to tell you why. The only thing that I will say that was totally technical about this movie was that they shot it in 8K. They used a red camera. They had a Monstro sensor. These are very expensive, cameras with very fast processors built in, and the amount of space and storage you would need to transfer a film of this magnitude is astronomically high. The computer processing power would be extremely expensive. You could not just do it on a run-of-the-mill computer. It's not just a typical 4K film. So that aside, is impressive. Now you go into the scope of the actual film process and development. Every detail of this movie was meticulously planned out. From the way the characters looked at each other, to the time of day that it was shot, to the use of natural lighting versus artificial lighting. There's very minimal artificial lighting in this movie. Most of this movie was shot, if it was an evening shot, it was moonlight and candles. If it was a day shot, it was basically the sun, a placement of the sun, or ways of manipulating sunlight to cast focus and shadow off of your subject or onto the subject, depending on what you were going for. That is already extremely hard to do for every shot of this movie. Then there's a lot of shots that are purposely planned as tracking shots and wide angles and close-ups to basically push the point of the character's emotion. That has to be choreographed, painstakingly. We're talking if it's like a performance for America's Got Talent and you're basically, or one of the dance shows that you like. It is extremely hard to do. And the fact that Céline planned every frame of this movie like this is extremely impressive. She's probably one of my newest favorite directors now because this movie was gorgeous. Even her lens choices, the prime lens she used on her camera meant the colors exploded like a painting, which is what she was going for. It pretty much dulled the colors when it needed to. It popped the colors when it needed to. And every one of those shots and every one of those lens choices, from the f-stops to the shot compositions, were thoroughly planned out. So yeah, I love this movie from a filmmaker perspective. It is absolutely gorgeous. So plot. So this movie basically revolves around an artist named Marianne, who's living in France or Paris, who gets called to Brittany Island she's commissioned basically to basically paint a painting of a young girl named Heloise, probably around the same age as her. I'm not really sure. I'm really trying to figure out their age difference. But Heloise has already run off another artist because she doesn't want to have her portrait taken, because the portraits in this period of time, because it's set in France in about 1760, is used to send to your prospective, husband. I mean, there's no courtship. It's basically, this is your painting, and when you arrive there, you're intended to be married. So her mother is setting her up to marry a man from Milan, because it's pretty, you realize pretty early on that the mother wants to get off that island. She's been there for 20 years. And from the way she talks to her daughter about, I understand what you're going through, having to have this done, but I went through it too. This was my life. It's almost like, what are you complaining about? Mama had to have, you're here because mama went through that, basically. So yeah, she's trying to get her daughter married off to someone in Milan so she can go to Milan and live her best life and get off that island. It's also made known to us in this movie early on that Heloise, the daughter who's basically being sold into marriage, had an older sister who didn't want that lifestyle so much, to the point that she purposely threw herself off a cliff. And before that, she even wrote a letter to her sister apologizing, but never really knowing or saying why. And when the character Heloise is asked why she thought her sister did that, she's like, probably because she knew that she dumped her fate on me, which is so crazy, So from a lot of standpoints, and if you're looking at it from a plot perspective, so the mother's already lost the first daughter, but don't worry, she's got a backup, is basically what's happening in this movie. It's so messed up. But yeah, so that's going on. She does not want her portrait taken, or not portrait, painted. She does not want to be, basically sold into marriage. And Heloise, prior to her mother bringing her to this island to get her ready to marry off, was in a convent where she was happy. And I guess was going to take communion. I don't know. I guess she was going to be a nun. So that's a very drastic change for her. So when Marianne comes to the island, she's informed early on by the housekeeper, who's amazing in this movie, that, the last, artist that was there, Heloise wouldn't let the painter see her face. And so Marianne came up with this plan with Heloise's mother to just act as her companion and paint her secretly from memory, which is pretty impressive. And it does work. She manages to paint a first draft of the portrait. But Marianne and Heloise are bonding in a way that's more than just friends. It's a slow burn. Like when you watch this movie, everything seems to be very slow paced, which is pretty much what it would be like living on this island. There's nothing really done quickly. But it just seems like there's a slow burn, but there's so many layers to this movie. So like Marianne's guilt, from keeping the fact that she's secretly painting Heloise from her, it pretty much takes precedence, and she tells her about it. And Heloise responds by looking at the painting saying, "Oh, that's me. There's like no life in me at all. This is how you see me. Pretty much it's crap." So Marianne just scratches out the face. And she basically decides to do it over. So the mother is going to leave for 5 days while she paints the portrait over. And that's kind of where most of the bonding occurs between Heloise and Marianne, where they actually end up sleeping together and basically falling in love with each other. There is a side story where their maid, I think her name is Sophie, but I'll have to look it up again. She's pregnant, and so she's trying to force herself to have a miscarriage, and then it leads to like an abortion scene, which is very taboo for that time. But then again, so are two women being in love. And then, of course, there is a scene on the beach where Sophie's going to check with, I guess, one of the women there to see if she's still pregnant. I don't know what these women are. I don't know if they're like a group of women that just support each other, if they're witches out of gypsies, midwives, I don't know. But they start this like really hauntingly beautiful tune that starts like the whole acapella that they do in unison is extremely hauntingly beautiful. Like it is such a really, like that tune is even stuck in my head today, and I saw this movie last night. It is so pretty. Which is interesting enough because the focus of music is not really big, except for there's one particular song that Marianne likes, that she attempts to play on the piano in the movie for Heloise, because Heloise came from a convent and she's only heard organ music. So Marianne's trying to explain to her what an orchestra would sound like, but she's doing it via piano and she can't remember all the parts. This is a key thing because later on in the movie, you actually get to hear that, song being played, live in an orchestra. And I'll get into that in a second. So long story short, when you're watching this movie, you know that these two women are not going to end up together. And it's 1760, in France. I mean, it's too taboo. It's just, that they're not going to end up together, but you want them to. Like, realistically that the type of marriage I have with my spouse is not something that they would be able to have back in 1760. Not between two women, especially between two women that, even though Marianne's taking over her father's business, they don't have their own property. They don't really have their own rights. Marianne was actually submitting paintings under her father's name just to be able to have them in like galleries and to have, people have exhibits for her. So that's not the type of society that would support two women being married and supporting each other. So you already know going in, and it's already such a sad thing. But when you're watching this movie, it's like a secondary thought. It's like you're so into the attraction between these two main characters that you kind of forget the world they live in, because it's just really, really intense. And even when they're not together, they are together on a more spiritual level. And what I mean by that, besides the song that I mentioned, there's also Marianne gets asked by Heloise to paint a picture for her, of herself for Heloise to have. Well, Marianne had given her a book. And so she told her to give her a number, and she gave her the number 28. And on page 28, she paints a picture of herself naked, basically where they were in bed, for Heloise. And after Heloise's mother comes back, and basically when we know that she's going to get married, they jump forward in time, where you get to see the two times that Marianne sees Heloise again, and one time is in an art exhibit that she has a painting in. She just happens to see a picture of Heloise with her child now, and she's holding a book open to page 28 in the painting, which more than likely it's the book also that Marianne gave her. So that's the first time. And the second time she sees her is when they're both at an orchestra. Heloise doesn't see Marianne, but Marianne sees her, and Heloise is listening to the song live that, Marianne was attempting to play for her years before, and crying. And that's pretty much how the movie ends, but it's so beautiful. Another thing that I really like about it, going back to the kind of technical aspect, sorta, is, so I said that there's not a lot of artificial lighting. Like everything is done by candlelight and everything is done by, natural light. There is a scene, like Marianne has this foreboding vision over and over again of Heloise in this white dress. And it's actually her wedding dress. And the last scene of the movie before Marianne leaves is seeing her in that dress. And what I really loved about it is the way they shot it. They shot it where the only light source that they had, which were the candles, were focused inward on Heloise's frame. So everything else is dark. And then you just see this angelic halo around this white dress in her. And that's what Marianne would see over and over and over again. And I just thought how creatively that was really gorgeous. But yeah, this movie, honestly, again, I had no expectations at all. As a matter of fact, when I first saw it, I'm like, this is going to be very long and boring because they're just on this island and they're just walking around. But it's not. Every shot has meaning, and every shot resembles to me symbolically a painting, which is such a very cool thing for a director to do for an audience, to just give you that, to basically not only make something extremely realistic for you to watch, but to make something artistically beautiful at the same time. So definitely enjoyed this movie. I don't know how she's going to follow up on this one because, once you have your first major one, really, and I'm not sure what else she's done, but I think this is her first major one. Once you have that as your first major movie, it's kind of hard. You got to go back and follow that up and try and outdo yourself. So we'll see what she does. But she has a very unique vision, and I love her film style. So I have no doubt that she's going to be, pumping out more amazingly beautiful movies for us to enjoy in the future. But yeah, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. If you have not seen it, it is streaming for free on Netflix. No, I'm sorry, on Hulu. I don't think it's coming to Prime. Somebody said that it was coming to Prime in June, but I'm not sure. But June is pretty far off. So if you have Hulu, please check it out. I don't know any other streaming networks that have it. And I will link the trailer to the movie too at the bottom in the description so you can check out the trailer. But it is definitely worth the view. And I would love to know, for you who have seen, all of you have seen this movie, what you guys think. I mean, did you like this movie? What did you think of the colors, the plot? Just hit me up in the comments and let me know. And if you would like to sign up for Jury Duty, hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to know who's next on the Nerd Ballot, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I can't wait for you to approach the nerd. Bye, guys.
Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it, but hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.